call Stephen Kerr.
Well, I begin with a simple observation that it is actually a pity that we have another of these Thursday afternoon debates on a subject that goes to the very heart of the effectiveness of our Parliament. And I'm very grateful to colleagues that are here. Of course, I would have hoped maybe we would have had a few more colleagues from all of our parties that would have come along to take an interest in how this Parliament works, because that is at the heart, I think, of the excellent report that's been put together by Martin Whitfield's committee. The bottom line of the report, I think, is it's a bit uncomfortable, is that the current committee system of the Parliament doesn't work to its optimum level. I think that's putting it diplomatically. Some of the committees produce excellent work, and some of the committees work really well. And it's actually down to what David Russell said, taking our party hats off at the door. Now, I genuinely believe that that's how Parliament should work. I genuinely believe that we go into that committee room and we should go in with a robust mindset, but we shouldn't necessarily, no, not at all actually, go in with a particular party agenda. Now, sometimes colleagues will accuse each other of that, and I think sometimes unfairly. It's possible to be robust and also be evidence-led.
John Mason.
I thank him for giving way. I agree with him to some extent, but would he not accept that there are certain fundamentals that our parties believe in, and we're not going to leave that at the door? For example, the Conservatives would like to reduce tax. Some of us would like to either raise or keep it the same. So we can't leave that at the door, can we? Stephen Kerr.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we bring our principles into the committee room with us. Of course we do. It's, I think Martin Whitfield talked about we know ourselves best, that's what we bring to the Parliament, something to that effect. I agree with him about that. But it's the way that we often divide very clearly along party lines when we should actually be led by the evidence. And there are some committees in this Parliament where, genuinely, the committees are led by the evidence. The Finance Committee is a very good one. Kenny Gibson, he's not here, but I would pay tribute to Kenny Gibson. Sometimes we clash in the chamber. Some of that, chamber activity is a different thing. But in the committee structure, and in terms of the reports that are being produced, that's a really good committee, very valuable committee, because because the rosettes are taken off at the door. Principles remain with us, of course they do. But when the facts change, we also have to be willing to be open-minded enough as parliamentarians to change our minds. That's the pragmatism that I think should go to the heart of all of our politics as Scots. Of course I will.
Ruth Maguire.
I appreciate Stephen Kerr giving way, and I enjoyed working with him on the Education Committee. I wonder if, rather than meaning our party rosettes coming off, and as we say, our principles, it's talking about how you interact with folk on committee with different views, and that's actually what you're meaning. It's not about our party policies or our sort of fundamental political beliefs. It's about that negotiation and that valuing of other people's beliefs and views.
Stephen Kerr.
And if I may say so, Ruth Maguire was a brilliant colleague to have in a committee, because she did exactly that when we were in committee. Ruth Maguire was often the way by which our committee did actually gel together. So individual members, irrespective of whether they're convener or not, conveners obviously play a very important role in creating that environment. But when there's members on board that are willing to listen to each other and move towards each other without compromising, and John Mason's right, I'm not expecting colleagues to compromise their basic political principles, but to be able to do that in a grown-up, mature way as parliamentarians. And our Parliament needs more parliamentarians. We need to take the view of what's best for our country, more than what's best for our parties. And my fundamental problem since I've arrived in the Scottish Parliament has been that this is a party-managed Parliament, and I find that, frankly, objectionable. I'll come back to that. George Adam.
George Adam.
Just listening to everything Mr Kerr saying, and we've had our disagreements, but we've always kept everything pretty kind of open and friendly when we've discussed things. But in my time here, I've never had a situation, regardless of political party, where a convener has been so objectable to me and so difficult until now, where on the Education Committee I have someone who I cannot work with, and it's extremely difficult and extremely partisan. Your colleague in front of you, Sue Webber, was excellent in her time beforehand, but our replacement became equally difficult. So it's back to the leadership example mentioned by the convener of Standards. That's the problem, is when you've got someone there, you need that leadership to actually be able to work with everyone.
Stephen Kerr.
I've worked a long time with the convener of the Education Committee, and I think when you get to know him, you can understand the way he works. And ultimately, it's down to his particular way of questioning that often things come to light that might not otherwise have come to light. I will give way in a second, because what is necessary for there to be effective committees, particularly with witnesses who are in the category, in excellent speech from Evelyn Tweed, it is important that there's a necessary constructive tension in the room. There has to be. And Douglas Ross, who we were referring to, is actually very good at that. So you have to see people in the round. I would say to George Adam that there are aspects of all of us that other members might object to, but there are other parts of the same person that you quite admire. And that's true of how I feel about George Adam, for example. And that's how we gel as a committee. I will give way.
Yes, could I just say briefly, I appreciate the members being very generous with interventions, and what I would suggest is I'll give until 8 minutes 30 seconds. Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I noted the point Mr Kerr made about convenership. It perhaps goes to his point about the need to seek election and to build a mandate across the chamber and command the confidence of everyone. That would be a self-regulatory check on behaviour that may be overly partisan.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, I think Paul Sweeney knows that I very strongly believe in directly elected conveners. I think that's the one way that we get this Parliament back up in terms of the levels of its scrutiny. And I also think it's a good idea that those conveners make a commitment to stay in post. In the same way that I don't think the turnover of the committee memberships is any good at all, because you don't develop a feel for the subject matter. If you stay long enough, you actually begin to love the subject matter, even if you didn't really have much interest in it when you first ended up on the committee. But the whole way the committees are constructed, the nature of the role of the convener is so important that ultimately, Alex Massey, last week in the Times, described something that happened in this chamber last Thursday. And I'm not going to name names, but I do think he's got a point. The nature of what we do in committee involves holding ministers to account. That's what we come here to do to a very large measure. And last week, Alex Massey's column in the Times, he described something he witnessed at FMQs, when basically the convener of a very powerful committee asked the First Minister, in effect, quoting Alex Massey, "Why are you so good?" Now, for some members that's fine, but I think conveners should have the self-respect to know that they have an official role to play in this Parliament. That means that occasionally they can't indulge in some of the stuff that might be quite enjoyable and even pantomime-like. And some people find that edifying, entertaining even. But for a convener, I think we have to expect different. And that's why we need to have the directly elected conveners. And I also believe that they should be paid.
The member is about to conclude.
I'd love to.
The member is about to conclude.
There are many things I'd like to say, but I hope that the Minister, I think he was waving my colleague James Bundy and I's essay, which has just been published in the University of Edinburgh Scottish Affairs, 10,000 wonderful words about what we feel we could do to make our Parliament what it should be, because Scotland needs a robust, strong, vibrant Parliament like never before.